All right, ready?
I'm Meredith.
I'm Elise, and this is your 20s. And welcome back to This Is Your 20s podcast. So actually, Meredith and I have very exciting news for you all because we have finally figured out exactly what we want this show to be.
Yeah.
And we changed our bio on Instagram. So our new bio, and I think honestly this podcast was that from the beginning. We just didn't have the words to express that to our audience.
Yeah.
So our
Doing
podcast,
like a little bit of rebranding, so it feels easier for people to find, because This Is Your 20s is kind of a broad. It's broad. I mean, your 20. That's 10 years of.
There's
life.
a lot that goes on.
So we wanted to streamline it a little bit so that people had a better time finding it.
Yes. So This Is Your 20s podcast is the well-being podcast for young go-getters. Radically honest conversations about mental, physical, and spiritual health for 20-somethings. So Meredith came up with both of those, and it just worked so well. I think it's just perfect for what we want for this podcast. Mm-hmm. And I want to remind our listeners that it took us 8 months to get that.
Yeah.
We knew what we were doing, and we've been doing that since basically the beginning. But putting the words to what your brand is very important, and figuring out what you want for your audience. So that's what we want for that.
And it's good not to rush that process. I think if we had tried to rush it and like force it in a way, then it wouldn't be as natural as it feels now. And so I think we've kind of let our episodes speak for themselves, and then the content has sort of guided the rest of it, if that makes sense. So if you're ever in that position where you're kind of starting something off, don't feel like you have to have everything like ready from ground zero, because that's typically not how it works.
Right. So. Never how it works. No one actually knows what they're doing until they do it. Yeah. So, but anyways, that's just a little announcement we have. And today we're doing another Zoom call because of COVID and all that, but our guest is from Nashville, so not too far away, still the Midwest, but we have Cheyenne.
Bitch, it's the South.
Well, it's the Midwest. It's still in our region. It's like 2 hours from here.
It's 4.
Is it 4?
Yeah, but it's not that far.
I guess
the
it's
South,
4 from
though.
Indy.
Tennessee is most definitely the South and not the Midwest.
Right.
It's okay.
Southeast.
So is Indiana the cutoff for the Midwest?
I don't know. It's a good
I don't
question.
know the rules here, to be honest.
Yeah,
but
don't worry your
don't
pretty
worry
little mind.
Anyway, Cheyenne is here with us, aka Amusing Millennial on Instagram. So Cheyenne, go ahead, introduce yourself. What do you do? Go ahead. Floor is yours.
I'm so happy to be here. My name is Cheyenne Baker. I am a millennial performance coach. I help women in their 20s figure out that weird time after graduation, aka the post-grad scaries. I also help women in their 20s and early 30s figure out what the fuck is going on in their midlife or quarter life crisis.
I love that. Every time, it's like a really terrible, I don't know if you're a Vine person, but every time someone says what the fuck is going on, it reminds me of that Vine. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know.
What the fuck is going on? And it's like a, like someone with their fist. That's how I feel pretty much every day of my life. So
no, I love that. I love that this is like, when we found your Instagram, it's like essentially what we do with our podcast. So like there's so many similarities like in what we're both doing. So
yes. Also, I want to mention, so Cheyenne slid into This Is Your 20s DMs and was the very first person that we didn't previously know, you know what I mean, like on our following, that had actually said like, I found your podcast and I really like what you guys are doing. So thank you.
Yeah,
seriously.
I didn't know that.
Yes, you were. You were the first person that like we, didn't from college, tell our friends or our family or someone like that. It was
found us.
Literally so exciting, and we were out one night together when we heard the audio message that you left, and it literally like brought me to the verge of tears.
We were literally in the back of the Uber, like almost crying, like huddled like this, like, oh yeah, you probably have our voice message. We were a little tipsy, but it just made us so happy that like we had touched you, and you of all people are doing like such amazing things with your platform as well. So it was really I mean, a big moment for
yeah.
us.
So
And now we're finally doing an episode. It's amazing.
Yes. Full circle.
It's amazing how
so
that works.
Cool.
But I really want to know where this passion started and why do you do what you do?
Ooh, okay. So let's rewind to about 2016. I really had this idea of content creation. And originally, I wanted to help first generation college students who were trying to figure shit out, because I'm a first generation college student. And I was like, I've been mildly successful, to be humble, mildly successful about advocating for myself, not relying on my parents, shaking and moving throughout the administrative offices of college, just to advocate for myself. And I really had to find those champions within different offices to get basic things that I needed, like, hey, my apartment isn't move-inable. Can you fix the dead bug carcasses that are like on the steps before the apartment? Or my financial aid package isn't exactly what I need it to be. No one's helping me. How do I figure this out? And I was like, I'm probably not the only first-gen college student that is struggling with this, but also I can imagine that there are tons of first-generation college students who are dropping out because they feel helpless. They feel like no one is championing them. They feel like they don't have an advocate and they don't know how to advocate for themselves.
Right.
Needless to say, because I was in the crux of my perfectionism cycle, I didn't launch anything. I didn't start the YouTube that I wanted. I didn't start a blog. I didn't start any content creation because I just felt like things weren't perfect enough. And so because of that, I feel like I stunted my own growth. I mean, I'm happy with where I'm at now, and the journey starts when it's supposed to, but I stunted my own growth and possibly didn't help the people that needed help at that time. Fast forward to 2018, I had this kick-ass internship in a statewide women's leadership organization. And it was going amazing. But towards the end of senior year, I didn't have any plans. I had no job lined up. I had this big lofty dream of moving from Iowa to Nashville. And I just didn't know how that was going to happen. So shortly after graduation, my then boyfriend at the time, we packed everything that we could fit into his truck and drove down to Nashville, stayed in like a little dinky motel for a week. I had one interview lined up, which went well, but I just could feel that it was not my calling and it just wasn't a good fit. So I spent 3 months unemployed, which was odd for me. Before, I've been used to having anywhere from 2 to 4 jobs at one time. Right. So to not work at all, I was like devastated. I felt worthless. I felt unsuccessful, like watching all of these other people that I've been in classes with, that I felt like they didn't have to work as hard as me. How are they getting jobs? How are they having life easier? And just was in this very bitter place. But then one day I like had a talk with myself and was like, bitch, we got to get it together. Like, what are we going to do? We can't just sit by the pool every day and drink. And so from there, Amusing Millennial was birthed. It started as a lifestyle blog. My boyfriend at the time was significantly older than me and white. So people were very intrigued by that. Intrigued, like, are you a sugar baby? Like, what's going on with that? But they also were trying to figure out, like, how was I able to not be working and still be somewhat happy and not like bawling every day, which I mean, I kind of did, but I still made it work. And so the blog was birthed from there. I became a Beachbody coach during that time. And I used that time to like really kickstart my personal development, really kickstart, which I mean, I'd been doing it for a while, but it just took it to a different level. So in the meantime, I start getting like all these DMs asking me questions about like how to do logistical stuff in your 20s. Like, how do you build a network in a new city where you don't know anyone, you don't have any family? How do you go about finding volunteer opportunities, things like that? And so I was like, if people are in my DMs asking me the same questions, like maybe there's something there. So from there, my coaching services were birthed. And now we're here.
Awesome.
That is so cool.
That's very real stuff that you're helping people with that I don't think is like talked about enough. Like,
we were talking about this yesterday. We were like, isn't it insane that I don't know how to fucking start the process of paying off my student loans?
Stuff
I
like
mean,
that.
You know what I mean? It's like they teach us all this useless bullshit. And I'm not saying education is useless, because it's definitely not. And I'm very grateful for mine. But there is no logistical, like, your 20s is figuring it out as you go. And I love the concept of that. But part of me thinks it doesn't need to be all just figuring it out as you go. Part of me is like, there should be resources out there,
yeah,
right?
Part of me is like, kind of, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I've lived 22 years, and I guess it's like, it's on us to figure it out, of course, but like,
I guess
that's why we have this podcast. That's why you're doing what you're doing. Like, we need voices like this.
Yeah, it's very important.
We need guidance. We're humans.
Yes.
No, that's really cool though. And I really liked what you said about like your main goal is to help people. I think that's like, I can genuinely tell that you are so hardworking and so passionate about what you do just from looking at your Instagram. I just think it's really cool what you're doing, for sure.
I'm curious too about the name Amusing Millennial.
Yes.
Can you just give us like a little background on that?
Yeah, so it's supposed to be a play on words. Musing, so like constantly thinking, because a part of my perfectionism struggles is that I constantly overthink things. But also, she's like, I get stuck in my head a lot. But also, I'm funny, and I don't try to be all the time. So a lot of times you'll see like little clips in my content, in the captions in my Instagram posts. But yeah, so it's a double play on words. I love that.
I love how you just said too, I'm funny. And you didn't.
That's just a fact. Like,
apologize for it.
Right.
I don't know. I would love to get to the point in my life in my 20s where I'm like, yeah, that's what I am, instead of, because I'm the same way. I'm always like, I mean, I think I'm pretty. I like to think that I'm this or that, and Lisa's like, no, you are.
Yeah.
Own it. Like, it's fine.
That's literally part of your 20s is like realizing your superpowers, like what you're good at, and excelling in those. And yeah, I agree. And also acknowledging that you're the shit. Like, everyone should do that. Like, I'm gonna fully say I'm bad at A, B, and C, sports being one of them. Suck at sports, hand-eye coordination, cannot do. But I know I'm good as fuck at this other, cannot do that. But I know I'm good as fuck at other things, and that's what people like. People are too hard on themselves. Everyone has a gift, gifts, multiple gifts.
Yeah.
Just gotta use them.
Can you talk a little about perfectionism too? Because I feel like I'm definitely in that point in my life as well, where I sense a feeling of just everything that I do, regardless of whether it's big or small, has so much thought behind it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it's just like, Jesus Christ, can I just fucking get up and just do my shit without having a mental breakdown? Like, I'm being facetious, but really it's kind of the truth.
Yeah.
What does your perfectionism look like, and how have you kind of dismantled the thought processes that make you feel like you have to be that way?
Three threads that I want to go on there. First of all, I talk about perfectionism in a cycle, which I think is not necessarily unique, but the type of cycle that I talk about is what I bring to this space. So the first step in the cycle is you're very high energy. You have all of the motivation. You feel very excited to start out on this process. And this is when you start to overthink. And this is when overthinking is actually good. So you're sitting there and you're like, okay, let's create this plan. So step 2 is when you implement the plan and you're like, okay, I'm doing all of the things. There's, no setbacks. There's no obstacles. I am in control of my destiny. I am in control of what happens. Now, those 2 sentences, that's where it becomes problematic, because the next step of the process is when a minor setback happens, whether you have a slip up, like you let's say you're like, oh, I'm going to work out for 30 days. And you get to like day 16 and you don't work out for whatever reason, or you have an outside source that kind of knocks you off your square. So then you start to feel defeated and depleted, and you're just like, well, fuck, I had this plan and nothing's going right. Instead of pivoting, which is what you should be doing, instead of pivoting and reassessing the damage and trying to extrapolate those lessons, you go into overdrive and you start to go with the original plan instead of trying to adjust where you need to. And this is where the burnout happens. This is what I struggle with the most, burnout, because when I have a minor setback, instead of dealing with what's in front of me, what I often would do when I was at the crux of my perfectionism cycle, I would stick to the original plan. I wouldn't pivot. I wouldn't reassess anything. I wouldn't look at what was in front of me to find those lessons. And so sticking to the original plan, usually for a perfectionist, means going even harder than before, being even harder on yourself. Your self-talk is just shit at this time. And so you get burned out, which leads to the last step of the cycle, which is feeling stuck because you just give up. You feel like nothing's working. You're working so hard, but you're not getting the results that you want. And so you're like, well, I guess I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want to do now, because this plan that I created isn't working and life just isn't going the way that it's going for me. So that's my explanation of the cycle of perfection and like how it goes over and over again. I struggle the most with burnout because I have huge Capricorn energy, which is so weird because I'm a Pisces. But I have huge Capricorn energy and I just love to work. I love setting goals. Like if you look around my apartment, there are Post-it notes everywhere with like my goals and mindset hacks and breaking down specific goals even further. Like it's a little neurotic.
I remember FaceTiming you and I just saw all the Post-its. I'm like, girl, I already know what that is.
At the end, I'll like walk you around so Meredith can see like the rest, because you only saw the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah, for
I'm
sure.
excited.
That's so good to hear. Like that whole cycle, I've never heard that before.
Like I'm being spoken directly to.
No, same. We literally had like a deep conversation this morning about like the podcast and just like balancing our two personalities with it, with the workload. It's hard. We also have a friendship and we don't want to get in the way of our friendship. So just like having real discussions about that. But like, it's crazy that you just explained it so well, because I think we both needed to hear that. And I think our listeners hopefully will learn a lot from that cycle too.
Yeah, no, it is. And it is a cycle. Like I never thought of it as a cycle. I tend to think of it as I just have a few bad days here and there. But kind of understanding now that it leads to the way you react, and then the way it almost allows me to feel like, oh, I can be proactive with this and realize that this is something that happens to you. This is something that happens to you. This is something that happens to a lot of people. I'm not alone in this. And knowing that it's kind of freeing in a sense, because I'm like, okay, so when this happens, I just wrote everything down. I can either pivot or I can get stuck, you know? So I think putting words to that is huge. And it's so hard to put words to, I think. As someone that has anxiety and is a huge overthinker, I was explaining this to her this morning. I want to reach out for help a lot of the time, but I often don't even know how to put it into words that make sense to someone that's not directly experiencing it, because it's so confusing to me.
Right.
So realizing that there are ways to kind of break it down is extremely helpful. So I'm going to use this.
Yeah, thank you, Cheyenne.
I'm glad that was helpful.
Yes, so helpful.
All right, shall we dive into the meat of this episode? So we obviously wanted to share Cheyenne's amazing story and her insight and why she does what she does. But we also really want to talk about your experiences with MLM, or multi-level marketing / what are they called? Network marketing.
interchangeable in my opinion with pyramid
Scheme.
scheme, but yeah, we'll get into that.
So I genuinely, I'll be honest with you guys, I really do not know much about this topic. I'm gonna let Meredith and Cheyenne kind of take the reins on this, and I will just be educated. But yeah, where do you guys want to start with this?
Well, I'm curious about how you got involved, because I see It Works, right, and Beachbody were the ones you were involved with. So I'd love to
what's
know.
your experience and what are your thoughts on it now?
Okay, so I want to say it was sophomore year of college. That's when I first started to show up in this Instagram space, and found this. I don't remember how we found each other, but somehow, some way, we ended up following each other, and I just fell in love with her family and her story, and she was real and raw. And one day she reached out to me and was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about making money from your phone?" And at the time I had technically 3 jobs, but was still not able to get enough income. So I was like, I got to figure out a way to get more money, but spend less time actually working, but also, just figure something out, which that is actually impossible unless you're doing some sort of investment. Just starting out as a 20-something-year-old, there's no way that you can not trade your time for money unless you're doing investments. That's the reality of it. Or you're in this online coaching service provider space. But that's a different story. So she reached out. I said yes. I sold It Works for maybe 8 months. I don't think it was quite a year. In the meantime, she had a baby, postpartum depression hit, and she kind of fell off the face of the earth. I didn't get enveloped into our downline or anything, so it was easy for me to leave that one. I didn't experience what you probably seen on YouTube with girls being deleted from group chats and some of the meme high school girl tactics that a lot of people experience. I didn't experience that, but it was hard for me to sell, and I was just like, maybe it's just this MLM. Mm-hmm. So I was like, maybe I'll try with another one in the future, but for now, I'm not going to sell anything. And then in the middle of my quarter life crisis, in the middle of my post-grad scaries, I was at step 5 of my perfectionism cycle. I felt super stuck. I wasn't happy anymore in the job that I thought was a dream job. Originally, I had this plan of going into public relations and marketing. And the job I had at the time, it just wasn't hitting it. Yeah. So this girl that I followed on Instagram, she was a mirror for me. She was also in an interracial age gap relationship, also very high octane, super fucking smart, just was amazing and such a boss ass bitch. And I was like, I want to be where she's at, and we're exactly 10 years apart. So I just felt like looking at my older self. Right. And so she reached out and was like, hey, have you ever thought about joining a challenge group? And I was thinking oh, I danced for almost 12 years and I haven't, worked out or anything. Maybe I should do that. So I joined the challenge group, and then a month in, she asked me, did I think about becoming a coach? And I was like, I think I could do that. So I did that for, I don't know, that was the beginning of 2019. I officially quit in October, I want to say. So didn't do that one again for a year. But this time, because I had a little bit more experience behind me, I was able to see similarities between the business model, the payment compensation plan, some of the tactics that they use, independent distributors use. And so I was like, you know what, something, I didn't have the words to fully describe it yet, but something about it just made me feel yucky at the end. And I was like, I'm done with this. And then this girl that I had connected with on Instagram, she was selling Monet for a while, but she quit. And like, I hadn't heard from her from a while. She hadn't posted any content in like 5 months. And then all of a sudden she came back and she was like, I have this tell all video. And it was like an hour and 30 minutes long. I sat there and I watched it. And when she explained like step by step, like this is what happens in a MLM and like this is how it is a pyramid scheme, I felt so seen because like I had the experience, but I just like didn't know how to fully grapple with it. And so I went on a rabbit hole chase of like watching other content creators and their experiences with MLMs. Like literally the first day I sat there and watched 4 hours worth of video.
I believe it. When you
And
get to it.
yeah, I really got into it. And so from there I was like, damn, like now I'm educated on it and I don't recommend MLMs at all for anyone.
So, okay, I know how they kind of work. Understand that it's like all through social media, mostly Instagram. They reach out and then you become low level, like under their business, because they're business owners. That's what they make you. That's right. That's what they tell you, that like you're a business owner, but you don't really own a business. So you're under that person, and then you have to get your way up, to get paid more, you have to get people under you. Is that correct? That's how they work, right? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And from the research that I've done, and I'd like to talk to you about this, is they, and it really doesn't matter what the company is, right? So it's less about focusing on actually selling the products, but more about recruiting people. And what's scary about that is we live in this day and age where the boss babe is something that a lot of young girls want to be, and
for
I don't
a good
think there's
reason.
anything wrong with that. I love the passion behind that,
And the entrepreneurship. Yes.
but they're selling it as a commodity when in reality it is kind of a mindset that you create for yourself, so to speak. They're literally selling it as, hey, you want to be a boss babe? Okay, well, you can be a business owner. It's not your business. It's not your product. You're not being an entrepreneur.
Right.
You're being a pawn in the game, essentially, for the person at the very top who's reaping all of the benefits from everyone underneath them.
Right.
So essentially, you're commissioning people. And it's pretty fucked up when you think about it at like the bare roots of what it is.
Commissioning people.
And what I have discovered in my research that upsets me is it's a lot of exploitation of very vulnerable groups of people. So obviously, call us vulnerable or not, but we're in our young 20s. We want to start a successful life for ourselves.
Be successful, right.
They target young, ambitious women, which can be so, I will fully admit, I can be blinded by a good sales tactic for sure. If you're selling me that idea, I might buy into it.
Right.
But not only that, but they're exploiting young mothers who, want to stay at home. Don't you want to stay at home with your kids and be a stay-at-home mom and also make money from your phone? And almost being like, you're going to work every day and you're not watching your kids. Like, are you a good mom? Or I've heard that they target like army wives who are constantly traveling and don't have kind of a home base or a community, and offering up a community that's kind of intertwined with what selling whatever product you're selling. I've heard that some products with Arbonne, for example, are targeting women with infertility issues and trying to convince them that the products that they're going to use are going to help with this, and none of these products are backed by the FDA. I don't think there's anything wrong with holistic wellness. Like I am kind of into that stuff as well. I don't think all of those products are bad by any means.
Right.
But to package it as, this can help with your infertility, this can help with your diabetes, this can help with your, it's like, that is teetering on dangerous.
Yeah.
And unethical. So I'm just wondering if you saw firsthand any of those exploitative tactics being used in any of the groups that you were involved in.
Yeah, so with my first MLM experience, My upline was amazing, and her and I still talk to this day. We just texted this morning.
Oh, awesome. That's one good thing that can come from it, is just like genuine relationships.
Yeah. I hope. Yeah, for sure. That's one good thing that comes from it sometimes, is that you actually do meet really genuine good people. And it kind of is that whole like a few bad apples spoil the bunch type of mentality. But I've definitely seen and heard just things that aren't true. So going back to what you were saying about exploiting vulnerable populations. So I want to break that down a little bit, just because I think for people who may be listening that are a part of them, or just don't fully understand like what's going on, like how is it a bad thing that you have this group of women that is going to support you, or who are going to uplift you in the middle of, you know, the most vulnerable time of your life. That's a good thing to have community and support. However, where it becomes problematic is, one, the payment compensation plans are just always shit. So you join your first month or whatever, they tell you like it's a low startup cost. Which, I mean, I guess $160 to become a health and wellness coach, like that kind of isn't that expensive. But if you are a college student or a young mom, like that's taking away income that you probably need at this time. But also in the video that I did like a couple weeks ago, I like fully broke down like how you get to an income deficit at the end. So I think I use the numbers of like, so you get commissions of like $60 a month, but then you break down the hours that you actually put into the business, and it's like 70 hours or something, or 120 hours or something crazy like that. And then when you divide the amount of commissions that you have by the amount of hours that you worked, it's like you got only like 50 cents per hour for working. Yeah. Not only to mention that, but also you have to constantly pay like these monthly fees to be active. So if you sold products or sold services like during that month, but you didn't pay your like monthly like dues or whatever, then you can't tap into that commission. So that money just like goes directly to your upline. And that's where it becomes exploitive, because like you're doing all of this work, you're not reaping the benefits. It's not a fair value exchange at all. Also, another thing you mentioned, the business ownership, boss babe, like marketing of it all. A lot of people like to say that they are a business owner. And again, I am not here for attacking any independent distributor. I'm here for all the girls getting all the coins. Yeah. However, let's call things what they are. You're not a business owner because you don't own a business. When you sign up, you literally like one of the clauses in the contract is that I am not an employee of Beachbody. I do not receive any employment benefits. I do not receive, like, there's all of this legalese that talks about how you are independently on your own. Like, yes, you have to be in compliance with their rules about marketing, and they do have rules about how you're supposed to stay in line with the FTC's guidelines. However, a lot of people like take it and run with it, and because there's such oversaturation, and the companies, they're profiting off of this, they're not doing enough due diligence and seeing like, okay, we have these people out here who are saying these god awful things, right? And they don't really police their own people, so then it's like, yeah, what the fuck? Yeah. And so they're actually just independent contractors, which means that you get a 1099 at the end of the year. By the way, when you're a business owner, you don't get a 1099 because you're not your own contractor. But I just wanted to debunk that, because I feel like when I was in it and I was hearing like all of these things, but people weren't coming to me with straight facts. Yes. It felt like they were attacking me. instead of trying to help me. So I when I have these conversations, I like to come with the facts so that I am seen as being objective and not attacked.
Right. And
sorry. Whoa.
But I think like the problem with all of this is just the lack of honesty. Like that's the problem.
The lack of transparency.
Yeah, and transparency.
And I definitely want to make it clear right now, like quick disclaimer, that I am not attacking anyone who has
been a part of
this, is a part of it. I'm simply attacking the system, and the way it's done I think is backwards, but I completely understand the desire to be an independent creator of your own destiny. I mean, I think that that's
what we're all about.
That,
yeah, we're all about the idea.
I think that there are much better ways to go about it. But also something interesting about the independent contractors, at least from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because they are independent contractors, it kind of moves the responsibility of any sort of liability away from Beachbody or It Works or Arbonne, because they aren't employees of the company. They're not, it's not that company as a whole that's broadcasting whatever message of the independent contractor. It's the independent contractor.
Yeah, definitely.
So that kind of allows them to be like, well, like you said, that's a bad apple over there. It's not someone that is representing what we actually do. Or try to do. So it's kind of genius when you think about it. Whoever created those is an evil mastermind of sorts. But it's messy, and it just worries me, I think, as someone who is in their young, early 20s, and women. You see a lot of younger women getting roped into this, and it makes me sad because that these women simply just want to create a better life for themselves, and or have a side stream of income or whatever. And unfortunately, with the amount of time that you're investing and the amount of money, you're kind of setting yourself back in a way to really launch yourself in the way a lot of these women want to. And when you're starting to mess with, mothers and families and just people that are struggling maybe to make ends meet. Not everyone is like that, but a lot of the people involved are in that boat. It's just unethical. It's plain unethical, and it makes me kind of sad.
And I also really want to talk about what they're getting these girls to sell and the mindset. Like, for example, you worked for It Works and Beachbody, and then Arbonne is a big one. So like just telling these girls that they need the supplements, they need this gel that's going to get rid of fat on their body. Like that's part of the system that makes women hate their bodies. Like that's those companies that sell this idea that they have to be. Yeah, it's diet culture, that they have to look a certain way and get rid of this part of fat on their body. Like that runs through the whole system. That is just a toxic cycle for women. And I honestly, like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to better your body, but it's when you teach young girls that they have to be dependent to look a certain way to love themselves. That's where I have a problem with it.
Because I know someone who is a Beachbody coach, and she's a young mother, and she truly seems to really love what she's doing, and has preached kind of about the change in her lifestyle and exercise routine and whatever, and health, and how she feels lots more energy and all these things. And I've been there, so I totally get that. I think that's very, very legit, and I think it's wonderful. But I do think that there are, like, I know the Shakeology stuff and things like that, and other supplements that aren't necessarily needed to achieve that mindset and body shift. That's dangerous a little bit.
I agree.
But, I'll get off my soapbox now, because obviously I'm not involved in it, and so I don't want to take away, your ability to talk about it. But this is all the objective research that I have been, and that I've done. So I don't know how actual, like, it's interesting to hear someone from the inside, because it's probably more of a credible information coming from you than it is coming from my research. But so anyway, but
it's all helpful.
Yeah, I love how you were very real about, like, the paycheck, because that's why girls start. They're like, oh, I can make this amount of money, and blah, blah, blah. But that's like, you just told us not the case, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you said too, as a young, in your early 20s, there are very few things that you can do to start yourself up where you're not investing all of your time. You know, time and money are huge investments, and you have to start looking, I think, at those two things, time just as much as money as an investment.
True.
It's hugely important. So
True, definitely.
that's what I think. Sorry.
Do you have any other like thoughts on exposing, or just something that you haven't mentioned with it?
I do want to talk about like why people, we, me, you, call them pyramid schemes, because I think a lot of people hear that word and they're like, oh, well, the actual definition of a pyramid scheme is, and it's like, no, based on FTC studies, a pyramid scheme is when the person who is recruited, they make the bulk of their money off of recruiting other people. And so a lot of times when I watch these videos where girls are trying to debunk this myth that their MLM isn't a pyramid scheme, they're using the wrong definition. And so if we want to have this conversation around what's actually going on the inside of these structures, is by actually acknowledging the correct definition of what a pyramid scheme is. And so just looking at that structure, a lot of times they'll also say like, well, you go to a 9-to-5 and there's an income cap and your boss makes more money than you and your boss's boss makes more money than they do. Sounds like a pyramid scheme to me. Sounds like more of a pyramid scheme than my thing. And it's like, no, just be like the actual literal shape of a triangle is not what we're attacking here. What we're attacking is the fact that you are making, yeah. And in videos, they will be like, yeah, like throw up this triangle, like, and I'm just like, no, like that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the fact that, let's say we have a 3-star diamond Beachbody coach and she has 10 people under her that are also coaches. And they have multiple different clients. They have coaches under them. But all these other girls are like barely scraping by. They're doing all of this work. Maybe they are getting clients. Maybe they are getting, or customers rather. Maybe they are getting customers. Maybe they are getting people to sign up to be coaches. But they are doing the brunt of the work. There are so many coaches that I know of who they get to that tier of like 1-star diamond, 2-star diamond, 3-star diamond, and continue to grow, not because they're putting in any more work, but because they're sitting back and the other people are doing the work for them. So they're the ones that are able to get these fat ass income checks or compensation checks during the month because they're not doing the work. And the way the compensation plan is set up is that the more people that you have under you, the more money you make, the less money they make. And I also want to just give a statistic from the FTC. Like they've done multiple studies, but this one study sticks out for me specifically. 91% of people who join an MLM as an independent contractor, whatever you want to call it, 91% of those people will never reach a profit.
Oh my God.
Wow. That's
holy shit.
And so truthfully, in order to make the money that these people are marketing that you can make, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's unethical. And I think that's the huge difference in between like how I look at it now and what I knew back then. Like I didn't know all of this stuff back then. But when I look at it now, I'm like, okay, in order to actually be successful in an MLM, a lot of times people have these really crazy ways of like cheating the system. So for Beachbody specifically, I know you asked about like weird tactics before. This is one. In Beachbody, when you sign up, immediately they ask you, do you have a spouse? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a partner? You should get them to sign up right away.
Your business.
They say you should get them signed up right away.
Like I'm just thinking, if you
sign up as a coach so that you can double dip in the compensation plan. So that way you start your leg right away, like one leg of your business.
Like if you went to, if I got my employment contract from any of my 9-to-5 employers that I've had, that question is literally, just think about the questions that you are asked when you sign whatever forms that you have to sign. No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
like,
that shouldn't be
it's none of
the
your
first
business.
question that they
Right,
ask.
that's
a red
crazy.
flag.
Yep.
For sure.
Red flag number 1.
Anyway, keep going.
But yeah, they tell you immediately, sign up your boyfriend, your husband, whatever. Even though during the process, if one of your objections to their sales pitch was, my boyfriend doesn't think that this is a legit thing to sign up with, or my mom was telling me about, this is really a scam, da, da, da. Well, you're always going to have naysayers in your life. Right. Do you really want to listen to them? And it's like, okay, yes, there are some times when family can be problematic and detrimental to your goals and your dreams and aspirations. But they literally tell you to not listen to your family. And that's like kind of, that mirrors like isolation tactics. Like that's predatory behavior. But now the same family member that you told me to not listen to, like you want me to sign them up as a coach so that I can start making money off of them and placing other coaches and more customers under them. Like that's a yikesy tactic. Another tactic that I've heard of, I haven't seen this tactic. I haven't seen this tactic like firsthand, but what I've heard is like when girls look at the end of the month and they're like, oh, we're this close to rank advancement, but I don't have another customer or I don't have another coach signing up. What they'll do is they'll literally pay for it. So how do they pay for it? They purchase more product, or they'll create like a fake customer. They'll like tell the person like, can I just sign you up and I'll give you the money to like do it. Which there are actual rules within Beachbody's like compliance against doing that. So like they'll say, if we notice a credit card has been used to sign up your account, but also to sign up like a customer, compliance will come after you. And a lot of times girls will just say like, oh, this is my husband, or this is someone that lives within the household. That's how they try and like cover it up. So yeah, a lot of times these girls are like, oh yeah, I rank advanced in 2 months and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, boo, you purchased that rank advance. You didn't actually work hard enough to get the rank advance, which that's another myth, like working hard enough. I used to think that if I wasn't being successful in my MLMs, like that meant that I wasn't doing enough work, when all I was doing was work. Like all I was doing was showing up on Instagram and trying to get these people that had trusted me to do this very cringy thing. And I feel so bad about it. Like, I just want to take this as an opportunity to also apologize to anyone who I got to like sign up, or if I've ever like hounded them, because learning about this now is just like, ugh, like I was that girl. Like I was the one like doing this behavior, and it's just awful.
Well, I think the fact that you're even speaking out about it now shows a lot of your character. You know what I mean? Definitely. Like that's hard to admit, like I was wrapped up in that, and I apologize. I've learned, I've educated myself, and I'm here to educate you. You know, that's huge. Yeah.
That's
like,
all you can do.
We had this idea because of a video on your Instagram already exposing MLM, and I was like, that'd be such a good episode because more people need to understand what they're signing up for.
Well, and I hope too that anyone listening to this that maybe is in a similar position as you or has experienced that. I mean, what you're telling me a lot is manipulation tactics, which can kind of create some form of trauma, really. And when you're out of it, I think realizing what happened to you while you were in it is, and it seems so silly because it's a multi-level marketing. It's not like someone was trying to hurt you, or it's, you know what I mean. It's insane when you think about it.
That can be traumatizing.
And the concept that the reason that you failed is because you didn't work hard enough. That's extremely damaging, especially to people like us who are perfectionists and who are overthinkers and who might suffer from anxiety or depression, or really anyone, any person has the ability to be really kind of damaged by that, and take that with them into the rest of their career life and their personal life.
That they failed at this.
Right. And it's their fault. I'm like, no, it's not your fault. It's not your fault at all.
Right.
It was never your fault to begin with. It's crazy. Like,
I think these conversations are just so meaningful and very relevant for young, especially in their mid-20s, like early 20s, and even teenager girls. Like, just educate yourself, no matter what. It's just a life lesson. Educate yourself before jumping into anything.
But also, I'm curious, did you, was it mainly young women, or were there any men that were kind of involved? Like, what's kind of the target market?
The target market for most MLMs is women. There are very few men that I know of. I don't know any men personally that are involved. But yeah, they definitely market themselves as being these like champions of women empowerment. And it's just not the truth. Like, you can say out of your mouth that you are for women's empowerment, but the tactics that you use, like, they're just, it's very sobering to watch like a secret team call recording and see these women being told like, oh, you didn't hit numbers this month, you're a failure. You are the reason why this team isn't in the top numbers. Or you feel like you're failing in your business, it's because you're not doing enough personal development. And that's another thing that I don't think gets talked about enough, is the level of toxic positivity that kind of gets wrapped into all of this. Like, so let me be clear about what toxic positivity is. Toxic positivity is when people are constantly told like, okay, say I come to you all and I say like, I'm having a really bad day. And instead of you all acknowledging that I'm having a bad day, you all tell me, well, have you finished that Rachel Hollis book that you said you were going to start? Like, maybe you should do more personal development. Because it's all mindset. Like, sales is all mindset. So you have to get your mind right. And instead of encouraging that person to go through the natural process of unpacking, of reviewing, sitting with that emotion, releasing the emotion, that's the actual natural process of processing emotions. I want to say that because a lot of people say like, sit with your emotions, but don't explain it. And so instead of them encouraging that person to sit with the emotion, go through the natural process of healing, they tell them, oh, just pour more positivity on top of it, and that'll help your mindset. And so instead of actually dissecting like what's going on more of a deep level, instead of just being surface level and all this fake bullshit about like, oh, it's all in your mindset, but like that, it just really grinds my gears. Like, I get so hyped up about it because for so long I felt like I was being fake. And I was, because I bought into this idea that like, oh, well, if it's all mindset, then all I have to do is just like do this personal development stuff, which includes reading books and listening to podcasts, which, I mean, it is some of that, but it's also application. Like, what are they teaching you in the books and the podcasts? Like, are you actually taking those lessons and applying them to your daily life? Are you going beyond the cute little Pinterest quotes? Are you going beyond what people put on Instagram to make look cute? Are you going beyond those things? Are you actually digging deeper within yourself? Like, that's what true personal development is.
And it's sitting with the ugly too, you know, it's sitting with the, holy fuck, I literally can't get off the couch today. Like, it's sitting with that type of nasty stuff that no one wants to shine a light on because it's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Wow. I learned so much. I literally learned so much.
Did you?
I feel like I came into this very unprepared because I just wanted to learn, but like it makes sense. It makes sense why, one, someone would think that this is a profitable thing to do, because young women can be very impressionable. especially when they have this big boss bitch persona that they need to live up to.
Well, and looking up to other women that have done it before too, I think every young woman wants a good mentor. I mean, I know I do.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
important to have people like that in your life. And so, yeah, I think it's sad when young women are maybe being, again, manipulated by that mentor figure. I mean, I think it's what the only word that I can think of it boils down to is traumatic, because I think of how damaging even some parental relationships I've had, or authority figure type of relationships aside of, business and things like that. If you add that in your work life too, I mean, that's a lot to unpack and deal with on a daily basis. I mean, that sounds to me like it was maybe very mentally and emotionally draining at times.
Right, for sure. But if you're interested and want more on this topic, there is a Netflix documentary called Betting on Zero. There's also, I haven't seen that one. I have seen the Lulu Row. Is that right?
That was on Vice.
Vice also, yes, has that documentary. Good. That's on YouTube. Lulu Row.
Yes.
So these are just some other, ways to educate yourself on pyramid schemes. I'll just say it, pyramid schemes.
Cheyenne, do you have any other resources that you might suggest to listeners if they're thinking about joining one or perhaps in one and doubting it? And you said, I like the way you described that as I felt yucky. Do you have any advice or resources for people in that situation?
You guys have talked about the anecdotal stuff, which I think really hits home for most people, because you have a person like sitting there that's more relatable, who has been through the experience. But for those who are more analytical and kind of go off and do their own thing, I advise looking up FTC studies on it. So literally just type in Google like FTC study on MLMs, or AARP actually did a study on one, and I was very surprised to find that out, because I'm like, AARP, like, why would they look into it? But apparently they have a study on it. What else? Just looking at any study on MLMs to get the numbers. Also looking at the income disclosure statements. If you are approached by someone and you're feeling like, okay, maybe this is something that's good for me. Maybe it is good for you. I'll just go ahead and say that. Maybe you'll love the products, which I'm all here for. Like, if you find products you love, good for you. But just type in Google, like, Arbonne income disclosure statement, Beachbody income disclosure statement, and it will tell you, and this furthers the idea that they're actually a pyramid scheme. They'll tell you, like, the people that are the top income earners, those percentages are very small. It's like 1% to 2%, or for most, it's 1% to 3% of people that are involved in MLMs. Those are the top income earners, and the people that make the less amount of money, it's anywhere from 41% to 80%, depending on which MLM you look at. So just look at the income disclosure statements and the FTC studies.
Yeah, look at the facts.
Yeah, look at the facts that way.
Jeff Bezos vibes, kind of.
Yeah, definitely crazy.
That's the vibe I get.
Well, Cheyenne, where can people find you?
Yeah.
They can find me at amusing_millennial on Instagram, or you can head to my website, amusingmillennial.com.
Yay.
Thank you so much. Like, this was a very informative episode, and I think it's really cool to get perspective from you, who has, you've been on both sides, like Meredith said. So
definitely.
Thank you for being so honest about this conversation, and
yes,
I think this will help a lot of people get informed on what they actually are.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are kind of secretly internet sleuths like me and just interested in this kind of stuff.
It is interesting. It's like, ooh.
It's a little like true crimey kind of like, I'm obsessed with true crime podcasts, and maybe I'm insane. I don't know. I'm neurotic probably, but
no, those podcasts are big for a reason. Maybe
all right. They really are.
Let's just turn this
shift to true crime right now.
Yeah, we're rebranding next week. We'll be like, we're actually rebranding. We're going to be doing true crime. That's funny. Well,
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
thank you so much. Anything else you want to add or say final
Yeah.
words?
No, this has been really, really fun.
Yay,
Good,
good.
yay. We'll have to have you back on again, I think, too. Because obviously this is MLM, but I'd love to hear just about more of your life coaching and like the business side of things as well, too.
For sure, definitely.
But yeah, we'll be around, and yeah, you know where to reach us.
Yeah.
Yep,
Well,
You know where to find me.
you know where to find.
everyone go follow Cheyenne and check out her content.
Yes.
She's
amazing.
Yeah, her Instagram is amazing.
Love it.
But thank you for listening so much. We love you all. Go follow our Instagram at thisisyour.20s, our Twitter at thisisyour_20s. Give us a review on any app that you're listening to this podcast.
Yes.
Check out our YouTube. Thank you for the support, and we love you.
Yay!
Bye, y'all.